Hi guys, Asmo here and welcome to the leveling portion of the guide where I explain how to level the Toxic Rain Trickster. I'm gonna go over the passives and the exact pathing that you wanna take, how to prioritize the nodes. I'm gonna go over the skills, which also can be found in the notes here. So I'm gonna explain them in more detail so that you can exactly understand why everything is set up like it is. And then I'm also gonna go through the items and what you're looking for early on while leveling. So let's start maybe with the skill gems. And let's talk from the early leveling and the first setups, how they are supposed to look like and what you're supposed to be looking for. So early on, you're gonna start at first with Caustic Arrow and then added Chaos Damage because you're playing as Shadow. And then you're looking for a bow that is really quick, so as quick a bow as you can find, the highest attack speed you can find. So it's going to be early on short bow and then later grove bow and thicket bow with 1.5 attack speed. If you can get some attack speed rolls on them, that's also great. Other than that, on the bow you would only care about things like increased chaos damage or chaos damage over time multiplier or just regular damage over time multiplier, which can be found later on or crafted later on, and also plus to the levels of socketed skills. So either plus to the level of socketed skill gems, which can be acquired from item level 50, or plus to the level of socketed bow skill gems, which can be found either earlier on, but plus 2 can be found from 64. So it's really nice if you could have a loot filter that shows you, for example, like grove bow, short bow, thicket bow, that are item level at least 64, because that can be very easily alt spammed to get plus 2 to level of socketed bow gems and give you an extremely cheap plus 2 bow that you can do a lot of damage with very early on. Other than a quick bow, so like a short bow in the beginning after the crude bow, you're looking for the following links. You're looking for a 3-link green, 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 and you're also looking for a secondary 3-link green, green, red. Other than that, you're looking for mostly green sockets, which means you're going to end up with evasion bases or dexterity requiring bases. And you also optionally can get a couple of red sockets, which are going to allow you to socket in vitality as well as steel skin. Steel skin is a very optional tech that you can put on the left click if you want, and it's going to make you a little bit tankier. After the green sockets, for Act 2, you're going to want to find 1 extra blue sockets, and for Act 3, 1 extra blue socket as well for the skitterbots and despair. But let's go back to the early setup. So at level 1, Caustic Arrow added chaos damage, and then after level 4, you're going to want to add a Mirage Archer and then either Lesser Volley or Pierce. Both of them are fine. If you happen to find a bow with lots of flat damage and iron rings, you have tons of flat damage to attacks and you can actually kill monsters with your attack hit as opposed to the damage over time field that the Caustic Arrow is dropping, then you can use Onslaught Gem. Because Onslaught Gem will proc if you're killing with hits, but if you're not killing with hits and you're only killing with the damage over time, then the Onslaught will not proc and you want to run these links instead. After level 8, you can also use the Void Manipulation instead of the Lesser Volley or Pierce, and that's going to provide you with the most damage. You also want to use either Dash or Frost Blink early on for the mobility from level 4, and then in the secondary damage links, you can also have Shrapnel Ballista plus the chance to poison. You can also socket this in with Pierce if you have an extra 3-link, and that's going to be your very early setup before you get to level 12. After level 12, you're going to get access to Toxic Rain, and then you have a choice of either using Toxic Rain Ballista with Caustic Arrow Self-Cast or just double Toxic Rain. This is what I prefer. This is what gives you the most single target damage, and I find the clear from Toxic Rain to actually be superior to Caustic Arrow because of the slow, because of how you can just shoot it on top of yourself as you're running away and the mobs chasing you are just gonna run through the Toxic Rain and die. I find this to be actually superior clear to the Caustic Arrow, but Caustic Arrow is still good for leveling through the campaign, assuming you have the Toxic Rain in the Ballista setup. I recommend and prefer the double Toxic Rain, so you're gonna have the Toxic Rain linked with Void Manipulation and Mirage Archer. That's gonna be your main setup. And then the secondary setup for single target for bossing is going to be Toxic Rain plus Ballista Totem Support and Void Manipulation. You're also going to be using Withering Step. You can use Withering Step either on left click or just click it manually. It does share cooldown with things like Dash or Frost Blink. That's why you also want to use for mobility Blink Arrow, because you don't want to be limited by not being able to use Withering Step and then being stuck in front of some river or some gap that you need to jump over. So you do want to use the Blink Arrow. It allows you to skip also a lot of different areas during the campaign, so it can be faster. Blink Arrow is a pretty good mobility skill if you have a lot of attack speed, which this build will have. You can also use a vitality early on, but remember to keep it at low level because you're gonna need the space in your mana for also reserving things like scatterbots and grace later on. So make sure to keep the vitality at low level. The only point of vitality here is to pretty much sustain the blood rage, which you're gonna get in Act 2. In Act 2, we get access to blood rage and scatterbots. So you're gonna reserve your mana with scatterbots. There are no other heralds that you wanna use, just scatterbots, nothing else. And then blood rage is gonna give you attack speed. It's gonna give you frenzy charges. It's gonna make your clear feel much better, but it does gonna cost you some life. So you either wanna be on top of using your life flask or make your life a little bit easier for yourself and just get vitality to sustain the blood rage. In Act 3, we're gonna also get Despair. Despair you can simply self-cast on bosses. After you put down the totems, you shoot the Toxic Rain a couple times and then cast the Despair, and it's gonna increase your damage significantly. This is a massive single target damage increased, so definitely pick it up and make sure you have the blue socket to wear it. From Act 3, basically from when you can get items of level 25 plus, you're gonna be looking for 4 links that are gonna be mostly on evasion basis or evasion hybrid basis, so like evasion plus energy shield or evasion plus armor, because you're gonna need 3 green plus blue and 3 green plus red. Those are gonna be the 4 links that you want. And in the blue one, you're gonna socket the efficacy, and in the red one, it's gonna be extra Withering Touch. Withering Touch you get access to after you kill Malachi in Act 4. So end of Act 4, you're gonna be able to add the Withering Touch, and it's gonna increase your single target damage by a lot. You're still gonna be using Withering Steps, so you're gonna be able to basically get more consistent Wither stacks with this. Still gonna be using Blink Arrow, Scatterbolts, Despair, Blood Rage, Vitality, and we're gonna add Grace once you get the mana reservation for it. So let's talk about the passive skill trees that I can show you when you get the mana reservation. The only other thing that changes from this setup basically until the end of the campaign is going to be the fact that you can add something like Second Wind for the blink arrow, so you can basically use it more often and have like an extra cooldown for the blink arrow, which is sometimes very useful, but other than that, that's basically your setup until the end of the campaign. So let's look at the tree, and here you can select different levels, different progression levels that you can find, and in the beginning this is what it shows here. You're gonna start through the chaos nodes, and you basically are going to rush to Fangs of the Viper. So we rush through the chaos nodes, attack speed, entropy, and we rush to the Fangs of the Viper because this gives us chaos damage and movement speed, which both are very important for you. Then you want to go for the Blood Siphon. This is going to give you extra strength, which is going to allow you to use red gems as well if you're using something like Steel Skin, Vitality, the Totem, Ballista, and stuff like that. This is going to enable you to use everything. And then we're going to path down. We're going to skip this for now. The Wasting gives you a damage over time multiplier, but this is only 5%. And because we don't have that many increases yet, because we're going to get a little bit more of them later, the multiplier is not that powerful early on, so you can even skip this until much later on, like Act 7, when you actually need the chaos resistance. Then we're gonna go rush toward Hunter's Gambit. This is a super powerful node. It gives you tons of increased damage, also damage over time multiplier, and also skill effect duration. So it's super powerful. You wanna rush this. You can also pick up some extra life and evasion here. And then next level of progression is picking up this node, the Ballistics, into Aspect of the Eagle and Primal Spirit. So this is where you go first. Afterwards, you go pick up the Mana Reservation and Grace Reservation, and that's where you can start using Grace as well as Scatterbots, because you're going to have enough mana allowing you to do that. Then you can also pick up this Wasting. You can also pick up the Bow Mastery here. The Bow Mastery that you would pick is probably increases and reductions to projectile speed applied to damage with bows, because it already would give you the 20% increased damage. And with these many 1, 2, 3, 4 masteries, it's very nice to pick up the Polymath from your first lab, which is going to give you a lot of damage and survivability. It's going to give you tons of sustain as well for your health as mana, and I prefer that over the Swift Killer and One Step Ahead early on. So usually I first pick the Polymath, second lab I probably pick Swift Killer, third One Step Ahead, and fourth Escape Artist. You can just basically go from top to bottom. It's a very consistent way of leveling. Your damage, your survivability, everything is going to feel really good. The next progression is gonna be going for the quick step, and then we're pathing around here. You'll notice we could path the movement speed and the intuition. However, this setup is made for infinite heist at level 64, which is what I recommend if you're starting a new league. If you're just coming in fresh, I recommend doing some infinite heist at level 64 so that you can easily afford your early 6 link, easily afford your bow, and so on. It's very, very powerful, and this character is pretty good for it. So that's why we're pathing through here, because otherwise we would miss like one important point on a very important thing like a Master Fletcher or something like that would give us a ton of damage. So that's why we're skipping this point. If you don't care about infinite heist, you just want to level, you can just path through the movement speed and intuition, no problem. Then we're going to be pathing quickly toward Avatar of the Hunt. This is going to give us phasing on kill. This is going to give us evasion, movement speed, damage over time. Super powerful node. You definitely want to rush this here. And then you have a choice of either going for the Master Fletcher, or in the next progression you're gonna see rushing for the Graceful Assault. I personally would probably rush for the Graceful Assault if you have enough damage, and if you don't, then of course you can pick up the Master Fletcher. And then we're going for the ailment immunities, so chance to avoid elemental ailments, as well as chance to avoid the elemental ailments and life wheel in here. That's gonna make you a bit tankier, and also we can pick out the immunity to corrupted blood. Then the progression number 6 is the infinite heist. So this is basically level 64, how your character would look like. We've got this mastery also for increases and reductions to projectile speed already picked up, because now by this point we've got 20 here, 20 here from the Master Fletcher, and 20 here from Fury Bolt. So this is tons of projectile speed. And then if you look at the skills leveling, items leveling, if we look at the quiver, it also can have 30% increased projectile speed. It's a very good base to try to craft on early on, because it's gonna give you basically up to 90% increased damage from this mastery, as well as the 3% increased damage from the polymath. So this is a very, very powerful mastery to pick up. And that's how the character would look like if you're basically finishing the campaign. Around level 64, you have the skill setup here in the leveling section, you have the items setup in the leveling section, and then for the items you can see I have a simple +2 bow, which you can basically alteration spam or use an essence, quiver with life res and some attack speed, helmet with life res and has some physical damage taken as cold damage. This is simply like a bot for a couple of C, and you can do that when you're doing infinite heist. You can just spend a couple of chaos, improve your character, and make it ready for maps. Body armor, you can see life res evasion, life res attack speed. On boots we get some life res, and we've got some movement speed. 30% movement speed boots are one of the priorities that you definitely want to go for. Again, life res and some attributes, and rings. For example, you can craft amethyst rings with the chaos damage essence, and that's it. For the flasks, I definitely recommend running Enduring Mana Flask from level 60. Your mana cost is gonna start becoming a little bit oppressive, so you definitely wanna sustain with the Mana Flask. That is Enduring Mana Flask. You can just roll it with alterations. And as soon as you can, I recommend picking up minus, like non-channeling skills have -2 mana cost. You can get this from someone on TFT, or you can prioritize Betrayal to get this early on in the league. Other than that, after the campaign, while leveling the character further, you're gonna have these progressions here. So you have the mapping. First, we're gonna be progressing through here. Pick up one jewel socket, whatever good jewel socket you find, you can put in here. We pick up suppression and resistance. It's really good to prioritize early resistance on the passive skill tree if it's ever gonna include that, and our final passive skill tree does include that, because earlier on you're gonna have weaker gear than later on. So early on it's good to pick up as soon as possible this resistance. That's why we're pathing here. Plus we're also picking up lots of duration. Next progression, we're gonna cut off this, because we're gonna get Onslaught Flask, and we're gonna cut off this life and instead try to progress here. Pick up suppression. You can also pick up chance to suppress spell damage in your boots, helmet, and gloves. So you can see if I pick up the low budget, so like as we start mapping and get like low budget, very simple gear, you can get 100% spell suppression, you can get 100% ailment avoidance. It's pretty easy to achieve those things, and they make you much more tankier, and they make your leveling much easier. But yeah, the next priority is to basically try to path up here, get Ghost Dance as we're doing our Uber Lab, so that we get extra energy shield and evasion and benefit from them. And we also get the Atrophy and Written in Blood. And then the third progression, this is basically the last step before Cluster Jewels. That's how your tree would look like. You pick up this area around a Leafy Shade, and then the next step is basically the medium budget, which is the Cluster Jewel. The only thing that changes is we get Cluster Jewel. We cut off this whole part on the bottom. We put in 1 large and 2 medium cluster jewels, and we put in 1 very large thread of hope. And that's the only thing that changes. And that's basically it when it comes to the leveling. Hopefully I covered everything. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. You can check out in the description. There are going to be links to part 1 and part 2 of the guide, which cover the basic guide for the entire character at the low to medium budget, as well as the crafting for every single item that I'm using here in the medium budget section. And that's going to be it. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.